Hello and welcome to the 107 podcast with myself, Ash, and my co-host Jacob. Finally, we are back. Jacob has the sniffles, so please feel sorry for him. But we said Bahrain to Bahrain, and that's why there was a bit of a gap in between episodes. But we're back and running on a normal order. Yes, we've just got back a few days ago from Bahrain.
We did. Great trip. Sort of an excuse as my stag. But it's a pretty pathetic excuse. It was a good one. Yeah, sure. Did either of us have a drop of alcohol? No, not at all. So yeah,
I mean,
you're typical stag.
It's a Middle Eastern country, so
True. But yeah, no, it was a great trip. Great to see the Grand Prix. Great to go again. This is our second time going to a Grand Prix together. Is that right?
Yep, that is. First was Austria 22.
Yes, and you swore off going general admission ever again. And I don't blame you. So yeah, we were sat in the Turn 1 grandstand. We had a perfect line of sight into Turn 1. Expected a little bit more Turn 1 action going into like the first lap of the actual Grand Prix, but other than that, fantastic. Would highly recommend going to that specific Grand Prix, wouldn't you?
Yeah, in terms of just starting off, the tickets we got discounted. They usually offer a 20 or 25% discount, and when we were leaving, they were already discounting the next set of tickets because Bahrain is one of the lower attended Grand Prix out of all of them, which I can understand, but it is actually very good.
I think to give you an idea, the daily attendance of the Bahrain Grand Prix is just shy of 40,000 people. That's not that many when you compare it to Silverstone, which is, I think, bear with me, on Sunday it was about 100,000 people.
Okay.
Let me fact check while you crack on.
So logistic wise, very easy to get to. I think I stopped off in Qatar before I went to Bahrain, and you stopped off. If you're for audio only listeners, Jacob's eyes have gone from 400% bigger.
Okay, so this is for the 24 British Grand Prix. There were 164,000 guests on the Sunday.
But on the Sunday.
On the Sunday specifically.
Okay, cool. It's times like that. It's like, I'm glad I wasn't there because getting out would have been a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I stopped off in Qatar, but it's very easy to get to. I think you stopped off in Turkey.
Yeah, I was in Istanbul for like 24 hours.
And then, there's lots of hotels around. We actually recognized a few people at the track who were at our hotel.
Well, you recognized somebody on your flight, didn't you?
Yes. So I got a flight from Doha to Manama in Bahrain, and I saw Andrew Shovlin standing there. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So I texted Jacob, and I was like, oh, Andrew Shovlin's on my flight, kind of thing. And then I noticed as I look around, it's like, oh, a lot of people were wearing Mercedes gear. There's a lot of Mercedes fans. Didn't even clock on it was the team. And then as we got up to leave the plane, there was a rather diminutive man, stood like 4 or 5 people in front of me. And I was like, that looks like Bono, but it can't be Bono. Is it Bono? And then I was like, it is Bono. So I was on with the entire Mercedes team, like some of the mechanics and stuff. So yeah, I got to see Bono and Andrew Shovlin. Bono's quite small in real life.
He's smaller than you think. Yeah, I don't know how tall he is. Yeah. He's not the Yuki small. But
no, he's not Yuki small, but I think because he's so muscly and stuff like that. And then as we were going through customs, poor Bono, like people just shouting his name from across the airport.
Not fun.
The first time it happened, he did not look happy. He was very like, what the hell's going on? This is an airport, right? You're shouting at an airport, not the best thing to do. And they shouted again, and he gave him like a little acknowledgement and stuff like that. But I think also one of the things about Bahrain is if you buy a 3-day ticket like we did, you get access to the pit lane on Thursday. Which was very, very cool and very unique to be that close to the team, to be that close to the cars. It was absolutely rammed, but we managed to get like good standing rather, outside of all the garages as you move through and get a real good view of some of the stuff that they were doing. There was some engine tests. There were some laser tests where they have to see like how far the driver's head is above something and put a laser across. I don't know. more knowledgeable people will know what that
It's
is.
like a LiDAR laser measurement thing. I don't know. Again, I'm sick, so I do apologize, but I don't know the specific name of it. But it's to measure that the car is like to spec with everything that they want it to be within. If they want to make sure that, for example, like the rear wing is within the like the FIA guidelines. So, for example, like when the DRS is open, it's not 12 millimeters wide instead of 10. I'm pulling in these numbers out of nowhere, but I can't remember what the system is called. But it's very intricate and a fantastic system, which is
I think this one was
so
specifically
clever
with the drivers. I think like the drivers.
I'm not too sure. I can't remember specifically, but the pit lane walk itself was great. I think that if you compare like I'm going to use Silverstone as a benchmark, which might be a little bit unfair because obviously Silverstone is one of the most, if not the most expensive race on the calendar. But to pay for a pit lane walk at Silverstone is an astronomical amount of money. With Bahrain, it was included in the ticket, which is ridiculous.
I think that's the drive attendance.
Which does help, obviously, drive attendance. My only thing was that when you pay to go at Silverstone and stuff like that, they're doing pit stop practice. The time that we had the pit lane open, there was nothing going on. The cars were mostly under like covers and stuff like that. So it wasn't as alive as I hoped or wanted it to be. That was my only criticism of it. Other than that, fantastic. And I'm not saying that it was a waste of time or a waste of money or whatever. It was really cool to get up that close again to all of the garages. I'd done one pit lane walk kind of before. And it was definitely worth it. I would argue that the price we paid, which was not that much money, it was worth the price of admission purely to go to the pit lane walk.
That was very nice just to see, and you got to obviously see the what do they call them? Haas had a mini one where they sit there and they look at the
the Pratt perch, but
what do they call it? Where they sit there, like Horner sits there and Lambiase sits there. Pit wall, that's it. You can see the pit walls and stuff like that. I think it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, it was absolutely.
So if you do go to Bahrain, head down there on a Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. Or Wednesday night, as we both did. So you're fresh and ready for Thursday. But yeah, very, very cool. We also, I guess, saw a couple of drivers as well. Kimi was riding his bike and had to cut through the crowd as well to go into the garage as well. We saw Bono again going for a run, and Jack Doohan as well as Iwasa, who is the Red Bull driver who's taking part in FP1, which was also very cool as well. But yeah, like I said, would highly recommend going and doing a pit lane walk if it's included in the ticket, which it is in Bahrain for sure.
Yeah, Silverstone is such a rip-off.
In comparison. Yeah,
it's a rip-off. It is a complete. But the thing is, if people pay the prices, they'll keep charging them.
Yeah, that's one of the things. But I saw, and I'm gonna, before we carry on with the rest of the weekend, and we'll talk more about racing and stuff like that as well. I saw somebody make potentially a controversial statement, and they said that the Middle Eastern races are better than the European races.
Define better as in better racing or a better experience.
If you take the racing out of it, so regardless of what happens on track, off track, so for example, the facilities, how clean everything is, how new everything is, the location, the public transport, how accessible it is, the weather, everything like that. They were saying that the Middle Eastern races are actually better than the European races, because the facilities are newer, they're cleaner, there's typically, and I would also agree with this, other than the people that were sat behind us who are a bunch of bastards, typically people aren't really drunk and horrible. People seemingly are a bit more respectful of others around them as well. And so they were sort of saying that holistically, other than if you take the racing out of it, it is a better experience. Like they were saying that it's easier to get to the tracks half the time. Like we had the offer of free shuttle buses to and from the track.
We had free shuttle buses or a 30-minute Uber, which set us back, it
was like 15, 16 quid. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
How busy it was.
Getting out of the track was a whole other issue.
It was only Sunday.
Sunday wasn't great. Saturday was not the best. But what would you say to that? Would you say, because especially considering the amount of money that we paid compared to the amount of money that you would pay to go to, Silverstone, I think is a bad example. But let's say to go to Spa or to the Netherlands or to, I don't want to say Monaco because that's another one, but Monza. I mean, I heard last year about how bad it was trying to leave the Monza track. It was horrendous.
Yeah, you know what? In terms of obviously racing, that's subjective.
True.
But in terms of experience, like I said, it's very easy to get there. There's a lot of facilities. It's very clean. So different races have different rules. Bahrain is like you can't bring any water or food in. They do have free water stations, but yeah.
Yeah, which I found out the hard way.
She found out the hard way. But there's lots of food. There's lots of entertainment. I think overall it is a better experience. I also like the fact that because the weather, as annoying as it might be in the UK, the weather kind of works because if you're sitting there for hours, you don't want blazing hot sun.
True.
Obviously with the Middle Eastern races, they've combated this by doing, evening races, night races, etc., which is quite nice. And the fireworks going off was really cool. I think it is a better experience. I think it's newer. I think there's more on offer. What I didn't like was the race tax. So if you want to buy anything, do not buy at the circuit. You pretty much will pay double what you pay online.
Yes,
I don't
true
mind
of all circuits, to be fair.
I don't like that. I can understand maybe like 10, 20, even 30% increase.
Yeah.
But like a Ferrari t-shirt was £80 online and £160 at the circuit.
Yeah, it was that quarter length zip that I wanted was like almost double. Which is outrageous.
That is outrageous. Yeah.
So my recommendation, and I said this to you as well, is like if you really want a specific piece of merch. So for example, if you want a hat or let's say a jumper, I think is a better example, or a hoodie, right? And you're not too sure whether or not you'll like it, or the sizing, should I buy a medium or a large or whatever? If you're at the Grand Prix, try it on, see how you like it, and then if you like it, order it online and leave the shop. Don't take the thing with you, but leave the shop and order it online.
Steal it.
Like literally just order it online, because if you're traveling for a
You'll
Grand
probably
Prix,
get it by the time you land back in the UK.
By the time you get home, it will probably be at home or like ready for a collection point or whatever it is. You have to pop down to Morrison's. So yeah, that's my genuine recommendation. Because it's just outrageous.
But toilets were clean.
Really clean, yeah.
Plenty of them. Free water stations. Unfortunately, some of the water got really hot,
which is weirdly warm. Yeah,
middle of the day,
not great.
Water.
The Domino's was not Domino's as well. That pissed me off.
Yeah, there's food. Obviously, there's Domino's. There was Japanese food. There's a whole bunch of
the katsu curry I had on the Sunday was actually really, really nice.
So yeah, and there's plenty of places to just chill out, relax and stuff.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the actual grandstand, pretty easy to get to. They check your ticket every single time you go there.
That was annoying you a lot.
I thought was a bit overkill kind of thing, because you need to have your ticket checked as soon as you get in. And I understand, because you don't want people taking your seats. But yeah, and then the seats were fairly comfortable. We were at turn 1, so we had a good view of them coming down the main straight and some action. And watching the F3 and F2 and the support races was really good. We got to see Jackie take out one of his old cars.
Yeah, that was so nice.
Dementia.
Yeah.
That was really, really nice. We got to see the marshals in action.
We did. Really cool. In EF2, 3?
All of them.
2?
In all of them.
Yeah, technically all of them, yeah. We saw Ocon go off as well during quali.
Saw Ocon go off. Crazy fast.
It was insane how quickly he flipped round.
Yeah.
And it still amazes me every single time I go, the speed difference between F2 and F1. Like, it's crazy.
I think the speed difference overall, you don't get it across on TV.
No.
You don't. Like, from actually, not in the speed, the closing distance when they brake is insane, because you think, oh, he's going to brake now, he's going to brake now, he's going to brake now, and they brake way later than you think. But again, like I said, seeing them accelerate out of, I believe, turn 2, going on to that second straight, was wow. And and just hearing the engines, you can hear them going full throttle when they're off throttle, everything like that. So you can kind of understand when people are pushing, when people are saving, and it's really cool. It's really cool.
The cars also seemed louder than I remembered them being for the last couple of times. Because I've been once a year for the last 3 or 4 years, and they seemed louder now than they had been.
Were you closer? Because we were a bit far back at GA.
Yeah, so GA we were quite far back, to be fair. Silverstone, there was a big gravel trap in between the two of us. But at Spa there wasn't, but that was the last generation.
Okay.
But they still seemed loud. We were quite close, yeah. But they seemed quite loud, even when they were going up, like, towards the straight after turn 2 or 3 or whatever it is you want to call it, the second DRS area. They still seem quite loud. So I don't know whether or not that's because of like a technical development or whatever, but I mean, we did also hear during like testing and stuff like that some of the teams were sort of running like broken diffusers as well, which I kind of got that vibe from a couple of the cars as well. So I don't know, it just seemed a bit louder. I
mean, this is what I was telling a friend about this, because he was talking about the noise. I was like, the cars are loud. No one's complaining that the cars aren't loud. It's that they don't sound nice.
Yeah, like I said to you, and with
very crackly.
I'm happy to say it, but I did not care about Porsche Super Cup because it just sounds like a bunch of angry bees. One Porsche on its own, beautiful. Together, harmonically, a swarm of bees. It's not very nice. It's horrible. And it was the exact same in Hungary last year. But I didn't mind. I still think the F2 cars sound the best.
No, I think the F1, for me, F1, it just sounded loud, which was good, but it just didn't sound nice.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I didn't.
There's a reason why people say like the V10 sing kind of thing. This was just like coughing, but it was loud coughing.
Yeah, true. But it was the first time in all of the years that I'd been where I've like, maybe I should have brought earplugs or something like that. That was the first time I'd ever thought about it. The other times I think the first time I went in Belgium, I was like, oh, maybe I should. And I actually brought some with me. And then the F3, I was like, oh, maybe I actually should. F1 came around. I was like, oh, no, this is fine. So that was more my point. It's just like, it seemed louder than I'd ever experienced it before.
Oh, interesting. And also we saw the cars during the day and during the night, which was pretty cool.
Very, very cool.
Difference.
Yeah.
The liveries, I feel the liveries pop a little bit more at night with the reflection, and the liveries also look a lot better in real life.
Yes.
When the cars are moving.
Yeah, they do.
So,
yeah, 100%.
The Ferrari's starting to grow on me. I don't think it's the best, but the Ferrari's starting to grow on me, and the Alpines look really, really nice.
The Alpines do look good. And I did say that Ferrari's going to start growing on you. I was on the fence about it at the beginning, but I did kind of like it.
It does grow on you. And then the fireworks show at the end was epic.
Was brilliant.
Really, really good.
I'd sort of forgotten it was a thing, and people had started leaving.
Usually, so I couldn't remember, but I was like, I thought they would do it like Abu Dhabi, where Oscar, once he crossed the line, they would do the fireworks then.
Yeah,
they didn't. They waited, and then it was all done at the back. But it was really cool. It's really cool. So overall, really enjoyed the race. There's not really much to do in Bahrain, so just go for the race. But it's easy to get to. You can't bring food and water in, which is probably the only negative. And it is a good race. It is a good race. A lot of things happened. Well, that we could see a lot of things happen.
Yeah, you don't need to spend a lot of time in Bahrain to experience the entire country, to be completely honest. Like, you could easily do it within a day or two. It's tiny. To go from the top of the island to the bottom, it's an hour drive. To go from side to side, it's like 20 minutes. Like, it's really, really small. So, but I would recommend it, going and visiting and having a look round and exploring a little bit. We didn't see everything there was to see. So I would recommend going and having a poke around and exploring a little bit. I didn't feel unsafe at one point either, which is also a good thing. I understand that I am in a little bit of a privileged position saying that as a huge white man, but I didn't see any issues whatsoever. I didn't feel even remotely unsafe at any single point, which is also a nice plus for anyone considering going.
Yeah, it was good. I looked at the prices for 4 days at Silverstone. So I've done Hamilton straight because that was the closest.
I think it was like, can I guess it's like 560?
No. £759.
Jesus Christ.
I just realised that our tickets and flights were less than that.
This is what I'm talking about.
Maybe even the hotel.
I flew back with Emirates, so it was a little bit more expensive. But if I really wanted to scrape the barrel and go cheap, I could easily have gotten my half of the hotel, flights and ticket for about the same price.
Yeah.
And we even got, that's something to note as well. You technically paid ahead of time, but if you turned up around the Grand Prix weekend, your visa was free, which is amazing.
Now we know for next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd happily go again. Would you go again?
Yes, only for the race. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fly on the Saturday, fly back on the Monday.
It is hot, so bring sun cream and bring bring lots of water. Because
I've never been anywhere that hot. It was like 35-ish degrees, I think, was the highest I saw. Maybe 36, call it. I've never been anywhere that hot. It was outrageous. I remember coming out of the airport, stepping out of the aircon of the airport, and it was like the middle of the night. Admittedly, I was wearing tracksuit bottoms because I've been flying, and I was like, oh no, I might have made a mistake. This is warm. And then that was almost like a warm-up because on my way back I had a layover in Dubai and it was 43 degrees. That was shocking. That was shockingly hot. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, all in all, the weekend outside of the racing was brilliant. But that's not to say that the racing that we saw on track also wasn't brilliant.
No, I mean, Oscar is, we'll talk about it more in a bit, but Oscar pretty much, he got pole, he controlled the race. It was good to see. You could see the gaps, and you could see it increasing, and you could see them decreasing, and you could see, the moves being made and the lockups and things like that. So, and I think the really cool thing was seeing the lines, how different drivers did different lines, or you can tell they've just missed the apex kind of thing. Which again doesn't come across on the TV that often.
You could also see like how much curb all of the drivers were taking as well, which was also super interesting. Like one thing I noticed was Kimi is so much more comfortable taking a huge amount of curb compared to George. And you really could, just to drive that home, you really could see the different lines that the drivers were taking in, and you could actually tell whether or not they'd missed their braking point because their line had changed so much from the last lap or whatever it is. Again, sorry, I do apologize. I'm sick. My brain no work good. But yeah, it was really good. And I think really just to drive home how dominant Oscar was over the entire weekend. There was a safety car sort of late on. Oscar finished 15.5 seconds ahead of George, who, to be fair, did have some issues during the race.
Yeah, some electrical issues.
Yeah, he had some electrical issues, seemingly, again, not his fault. And he didn't seem to have those issues in Saudi Arabia or in Jeddah either, which is good. So hopefully it was a one-off. But it was very annoying. Like, I had the F1 app open on my phone so we could see the timing screens and stuff while we were watching. And it was very annoying. And I can't imagine how annoying it was on the broadcast watching George's transponder just drop down a lot, it repeated itself a lot. So I can't imagine how annoying that would have been, watching it on TV.
Yeah, because I remember you had it on the app, and I was like, oh, something's happened to George. And he was tumbling down, and I thought, hold on, that is George.
Yeah, he just drove past, and it says he's in 19th. What's going on?
So, yeah, that was strange. But, yeah, and I think apparently we missed a very poorly directed Formula One races.
Apparently so.
A lot of the feedback that I heard and read online was that they were missing a lot of the action and the transponder stuff and things like that. So yeah, very interesting. So we picked a good race to go to because we were like, this is annoying to watch on TV.
That we did. There were a lot of overtakes and stuff like that as well. I think Bahrain Turn 1 is probably one of the best overtaking opportunities of the entire year, let alone that track. I mean, can you name one corner off the top of your head where you see a lot more overtakes than that? I would say maybe Hungary Turn 1, maybe?
Monza Turn 1.
Monza Turn 1 as well, Turn 1, 2, yeah. But that's the level we're talking about in terms of how much action there was going into Turn 1 as well, so...
And then it set up for the second straight as well, because then you had people going on the inside, going around on the outside.
Because we saw Lando getting past Charles like on that back straight. We just about the tiniest little red lights at the end of the straight. We did see them overtake each other, I guess, at similar points, which was also very, very cool to see.
That was super cool. Overall, just enjoyed it.
Yeah, overall, really fantastic race. I had a couple of other things just to say, like other than obviously Piastri just dominating the entire weekend. And we talked about George having some electrical issues. I don't think Ferrari did that bad, genuinely. And I think they've very clearly got race car. Yeah, if it wasn't for the safety car, then they might have even done better than they had. But one thing that stood out to me as well was Max struggling to get past an Alpine, which was like Pierre was on fire.
Fair play to Pierre.
Yeah, difficult or like disappointing, to see him duck out in Jeddah. We'll talk about Jeddah at a different point. But like frustrating to see him dip out. But one thing I will say is I don't understand how Hamilton got driver of the day. To me, I would have said either Gasly or Behrman for driver of the day.
I would have given it to Gasly, but do you remember as you walked around the circuit looking for a cap, and whose cap was the only one that sold out at the entire circuit? So I think like a lot of it just does is like, hey, I'm a Hamilton fan. He's going to get my vote. Yeah, pretty much regardless.
Yeah, I think with that was always similar to like Hamilton has a semi-decent race, driver of the day. Yeah, it's just one of those things. That team Hamilton, which leads me on to one thing, which is F1 Fantasy. Please do come and join our league if you haven't already. But like that's one thing that like is actually a good thing is that during Fantasy you don't get additional points anymore for driver of the day, which I think is a good move because it was getting a bit ridiculous. It was literally just okay, have Lando Norris in your team, cool, you get driver of the day, extra points. It was ridiculous. But yeah, please do come and join our fantasy. It's a lot of fun. I don't really have anything else from that Grand Prix to talk about, to be completely honest. Like I said, thoroughly enjoyed myself. The racing was great. Nothing really controversial happened, I don't think.
No, the only thing, obviously, I think respect to Max for doing the best with that car. For Yuki as well, just finishing a couple of spots off him. Lando made that mistake with not being in a starting grid, because he made such a good start. I was like, oh my god, he's up, and then it turned out he was way ahead of where he was supposed to stop.
Well, hold on. I don't think it gave him that much of an advantage. I think it did very clearly give him an advantage, but not that much. I think
it gave him that much of an advantage. Yeah, of course it did.
It was not that far out of the grid box.
It was clearly out of the grid box.
Clearly out is different than massively far out.
In a sport where they're literally going down to the 100th second.
I understand.
Every centimeter.
I understand. However, I don't see it as that was the reason why he got from P whatever it was all the way up. Like I think that if you'd have moved the car, he was like 6 inches or so out of the box. I think if that car was in the exact same position, I still think he would have had a pretty good start. Not as good of a start. That's my only point, is that if he'd have still been in the grid box, if he'd had the exact same start, but been in the correct position, he might not have made up the 5 places or whatever it is that he made up within the first lap. It might have been 3. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but I just think it did contribute.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It contributed, but not as much as you might think. It's not the reason why.
No, I think it is the reason why. He's ahead of Max. Even if it's 6 inches, he's ahead of Max and he's closer to the 2 cars in front of him. Simple as. So, but yeah, we can agree to disagree.
Sure, let's do that.
He should have made the mistake anyway.
No, he shouldn't have. And we'll talk more about Lando's mistakes in our next episode. Because I'll leave that little cliffhanger there. But anything else to chat about about the entire Grand Prix weekend? Anything at all? Do you want to talk about what happened when we arrived in our room? Close thing.
No, not really. Not really. This is a Formula One pod.
We don't want to talk about the quality of the hotels. All right, cool. Alrighty then.
It wasn't the Ritz, we'll just say that.
No, it wasn't the Ritz. No, they don't. Yeah. We will leave it there then. Thank you very much for listening and tuning in. If you haven't already, please do like and follow the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. I may be sick, but I can still do that. I'm ready to reel it off. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will be back to talk all things Jeddah at some point soon. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.